Welcome everyone to the Q&A session for our upcoming video course, Visionary Activist Astrology, the 7-week journey to cultivate the language of astrology to access your unique gifts and increase serendipitous synchronicity. Try saying that 6 times fast. I'm Lisa Bonise, and I'm really jazzed to be hosting this hour-long Q&A chat for the Shift Network, where we'll explore the teachings of Caroline Casey and address questions about her upcoming 7-week course, Visionary Activist Astrology, which begins next Tuesday. No, that's not next Tuesday. Tuesday, September 12th. Later, I'll explain how you can participate in this course, even if you can't attend the live sessions. But first, I want to introduce our guest. Caroline Casey is the creator and host of the Visionary Activist Show on Pacifica Radio Network. Her guests are leading contributors to a culture of reverent ingenuity, and it has been called one of the best radio shows in America. She studied and practiced in many mystery schools, acquired a BA from Brown University in myth, fairy tales, and world religions, studied Grail legend with the late great mythologist Joseph Campbell, and cahooted with the late Jungian trickster James Hillman. In just a few minutes, we're going to open up for your questions, but first, I want to bring Caroline on. Welcome, Caroline. It is always a pleasure to talk to you.
That's wonderful. And look, I brought teaching assistants with because Ursula Le Guin says, what does she say? Ursula Le Guin says, those who do not listen to dragons are doomed to live out the nightmares of politicians, right? Right. Back there. So, yes, what a fabulous world. And so, yeah, it is an opportune moment, you know, as the Chinese say, you know, disaster is, crisis is disaster and opportunity. So I am enthused. I started studying astrology in 1970, and I started teaching astrology in 79. And why is it so important for us now to have this wonderful, these building blocks of creation that we all insource what we've been outsourcing, our authority, our leadership, our trickster. So I do love in this wild time of storms all over. I mean, 1/3 of Bangladesh is underwater now, as well as Hurricane Harvey, as well as fires in Oregon. Just got back from the Eclipse Festival there, fires on both sides, British Columbia on fire. So, yes, how do we become agents of cool response in a hot, reactive world? So, let's do that now. I love this mudra, you know, of just arms not clenched tight, just loose. It's a mudra that when we just adopt it as an experiment, believing nothing but just seeing, this is about calm and no fear and equanimity, just as though we're stepping into the center of the storm as opposed to being whacked around the whirlwind. It's like Kuan Yin, right? Kuan Yin, goddess of compassion, with her eyes closed and contemplative and compassionate reverie, but with one foot forward, ready to leap in when the opportunity opens or unfurls before her or us according to our inward dedication. So, you know, as we look at the world, you know, we go, well, there's a diabolic symmetry. Okay, we are pattern tracking beings. And astrology, to study astrology really is to change and encourage our brains to think in patterns, and in that way to be attuned, you know, to the choreography of creation. You know, we love pattern tracking. And so I love words and etymology. If we track everything back to its originating impulse, where it was liberating and more clear. So a friend years ago had said, you know, do you know what symbolic came from? And I go, no, it's only the entire purpose of my life, but where does it come from? Well, sim means together, and bol is to throw. So symbolic is thrown together. And my friend said, so either we have a symbolic relationship to the world, or the world is diabolic, right? Which means thrown apart. So part of everything speaking to us as though a tarot card, you know, those cultivating intimacy with the power of symbols have strategic, personal, and cultural advantage. So as though in a powerful and catastrophic dream, we dreamed that this huge storm arising from heating waters, you know, moved in on Houston, the world's capital of poison, of toxic petrochemicals and of the fossil fuel industry, which is giving rise to global warming, which then sends the storm, which goes to the place of its origin. It's all speaking to us. So, then there's symbolic symmetry, and that's what we're really dedicated to. Again, the throwing together so that we can be agents and self-possessed. And we'll dive into the now value of just being here now. And then if you are so magnetized to join us on this 7-week romp in which we cultivate each one of the planets inwardly, see it outwardly. How do we honor it? How do we cultivate it? How do we inhale it? What happens when we don't? That's why, just for the divinatory fun of it, I couldn't help but notice when Lisa came up that I go, "What's that book in back of you, Lisa? Fear of the Father." And you said, you're a crime, it's a crime book, and you wrote it. And I go, "Oh, I love that. That's very Saturn. If we don't possess our Saturn, then we should be frightened of Big Daddy or the reality police or any outsourcing of leadership to inappropriate dementors and dingbats and sociopathic sadists and all of that. We're going to inhale that back in." But that's why I said to you backstage, I love myth. Mythic figures are metaphoric animations of intrinsic intelligence in nature. Is one way to play it. Fairy tales, more local and customized, symbolic things in which cultures symbolically embedded their science to be handed down, which is why the Anonymith is the Venus precise orbital cycle. And then we got detective novels and crime fictions, and I got to ask Lisa, "Do you know when the earliest detective novels and crime fiction was?" And she goes, "No." And I go, 231 BC is the oldest we have, still preserved on bamboo paper. Bamboo, pretty good. And it's important for all of us because it's the same themes: myth, fairy tale, detective novels, crime fiction. What they said in 231 BC was the purpose of the magistrate detective within us all is to dive into the underworld. We're all doing that, and that's why it's good to have company, in order to restore human affairs to be in accord with the mandate of heaven and earth. On earth as it is in heaven. We go, "Oh, that's great." So I derive a lot from myth, fairy tales, and crime fiction about, how do we tease this into practicality in our own personal lives as well as in the collective. Yeah. So wherever you want to go.
All right. Well, thanks for all of that. I can't wait to get started on the conversation. We've got some great questions. We have the rest of our time together to dive into your questions, those of you who are viewing, as we prepare for Caroline's upcoming course. Again, that's called Visionary Activist Astrology, and it begins Tuesday, September 12th. And if you want to learn more about this 7-week course, you can visit visionaryastrologycourse.com. That's 3 words with no spaces to see the full description. So let's go ahead and get started with the questions. If you have a question for Caroline, you can type it in, and I'll be happy to read them aloud. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started with some questions that are already here waiting. Let's start with, hold on, let me get over here to this page. We have a question from Patricia, which I think is a really good one to start. She says, "Do I need my astrology chart for the course? Or is that something that you'll be doing?"
We can certainly easily arrange such a thing. When I started teaching astrology in 1979, but how I continue to love to do that is with a wide range of attendees, people who are professional astrologers and know it really well, and people who don't know their charts or know very little. I think it works really great because we're learning a language. And language grants us access to the realm it describes. If we can speak of it, we can journey there. So it's easy enough to get your astrological chart and to begin to delineate it. And so each week, we have a different letter of the astrological alphabet of our psyche. We have the planets, and then we have the signs of the zodiac. And the way I do it when I do charts, individually or collectively is, it trains our brain. We go, an astrological chart is just a stylized factual map, right? So we start from a fact. We go real map, symbolic map, right? Not diabolic, symbolic map, just as everything is real and is symbolic. We're reaching back to our ancestors who had a symbolic intimacy with the world by being able to read the world symbolically, understanding that it's speaking to us. 3 crows flying overhead, this kind of clouds means we should save this much quinoa. That it's in us to be quickened and awakened. So that's great. Again, real map, symbolic map. And then I go, it's a symbolic map of your navigating instructions to yourself through the lens of now, in which there's some collective we're all going through, and then some customized. And we'll be doing this in the astrology sessions, in which each week 2 brave people get to volunteer. People have already done that, to have their charts be exemplars, in which we go, and here's Saturn, and we can see why this person has a fear of their father or whatever, but we animate and work it, about 15 minutes per chart, so 2 per session, so 14, and lots of things around the edges. It will be a jolly, jaunty journey. So if you go, I have my chart, what does it mean? And think of it also, without being worried about what does it all purport to mean, a symbolic map of our interior psyche and its connection to the larger world, which is why it is such a beautiful language. That's, and everybody's got their different take on it. Many people go to different astrologers, and I go, that's good, as long as it guides you to your own autonomy. An astrological chart is like a perfect poem or a perfect dream. So anybody skilled in the language will agree, but come at it from a slightly different angle. And we encourage autonomy. Autonomy is a sacrament. And indeed, we're throwing everything into the cauldron now, because all cultures have had their different spiritual teachings and their different astrologies. And what do we need now? We want an astrology of autonomy and effective cultivating, animating our considerable gifts and contributing them to the community in a way that is replenishing at this cuckoo time of dire beauty. So yes, good question, Patricia. And we could go on in that, and we will, yeah.
All right. Let's move on to Louise's question. Louise says, can astrology tell us where to live, where our people are, our resident team of equals? And if so, where does one look in our chart?
Right. Well, my great late ancestor friend, Jim Lewis, was the creator of astrocartography, which is quite interesting. It's as though, just as time is subjective, so is space. And it gives a map. We can research these things. It just will show you a world map, and when you were born, what planets were angular where. Now, Jim Lewis, because he was creating it as a kind of commercial fast thing, would be glib and go, yes, absolutely, the place for you, your people are, where you'll find love and money is Pango Pango. You must go there, And I was a little more complex, and he said, you're burning out my report writers with your complexity, because it depends on what your relationship is. Sometimes people, under what's called Saturn transits, where you do face, deep inside appointment, without even knowing anything, they move to a Saturn line, going, oh, I must go inside. So, in a way, we don't necessarily need astrology, but it's a wonderful remedial tool for our own autonomy and intuition about where to be when. So one could approach that question in many ways, like, where is it? Right now, and everything's kind of changing, right? Because there are some things that are true, and there are times where those things are even truer. So at the moment, Saturn in Sagittarius squares Neptune, meaning many people are wondering where to be, what to do. Saturn, seriousness, autonomy, authority, inhaling our authority, is stationing. It's inward, looked like it was going backwards, stationed last Friday, now going forward. But it says it's a very deep time. So it says one thing, which is not dodging your question, but inward dedication and definition inwardly, magnetizes the outward path. What's your definition of your people? What's your definition of how you want to feel? Certainly, Saturn trine your, I'll say it and translate it, Saturn, discipline, focus, autonomy, trines Uranus, the trickster, all important part of this eclipse and everything, 120-degree angle, kind of like greased lightning. But it's so disciplined wildness, best time ever to be in Aquarius. The two ruling planets are in accord, meaning we all want our pack. So on Earth, as it is in heaven, something I've been using and I love is wolves and coyotes are mating, right? And I've lived with a part wolf and I've lived with a half coyote for over 19 years. She's an ancestor now. Love her always. So I know these people pretty well. So wolves, they do play every 30 minutes, no matter what, even when they're hunted, even though they must hunt. Play is important. But wolf pack, very Saturn. Everybody's got a responsible job in the pack. Coyotes, no, not so much. But a wild, mad, tricky, wheel and deal genius, right? So the evolutionary advantage of having wolves and coyotes mate, scientists call them coy wolves, I call them wolfotes, right, is wouldn't we all like to have and contribute to a supportive wolf pack that encouraged our unique coyote rather than suppressed it? And that's part of what I aspire to with all the different groups in this group I will be convening through Shift is may it be like a wolf pack that encourages everybody's uniqueness, right? So that's part of our dynamic. So it's a round and curvy way, Louise, of saying at the moment, the inward dedication, going, what am I dedicated to? The inward dedication strengthens our signal, so that we're more likely to be danced into place with the right people at the right time. And because of its connection to Jupiter, it says, well, what do you want to feel like where you live? And what do you want to feel like to where you live? You write it, we'll book it. So it's not like, should I move to Phoenix? It's like, no, go inside. What do you want to feel like, where you live? What do you want to feel like to where you live? Inward, and then be quite surprised, going, who would have imagined I'd be moving to, but it makes complete sense, right? So we're available to a larger guiding genius than, and then there's a million ways to answer that question as well.
Of course there is. There's a million different answers to everything.
Yeah.
Let's go to another question. This is, there's no name attached to this, so let's just say anonymous wants to know, what can be learned from retrograde planets in our natal charts, and what do they signify?
Cool. Great question. Okay, to make it available to everybody. So retrograde planets, it's an illusion, right? It means from our perspective on Earth, periodically it will look like planets go forward like they do, and then appear to move backwards, and then station and go forwards. So retrograde planets, and this is, I'm a renegade rascal trickster even in the astrology realm, because, and again, I help people recover from bad astrology readings, because sometimes astrology will go, oh, so many retrograde planets, and I go, no, it's all choreography. So I think of retrograde planets in our birth charts and what's going on now, Mercury's retrograde, as a planet going on a vision quest. And in a birth chart, it's where we must provide for ourselves early. So it's in early life, it can increase that sense of difference, like, oh, poor me. But as we get older, and we watch by progression as they go forward, but as we get older, it's a glorious realm of where we are free from conditioning. So if we take, say, Saturn retrograde, and I love testing this out. We believe nothing, we entertain possibilities, So Saturn, father, authority, structure, So I ask people, Saturn retrograde, was your father missing? And they go, yeah, or he was there, but not psychically, or he traveled all the time, or he left when I was 4, or whatever. So might we say you had to be your own father? Yes, that really works. And then as we get older, so it's kind of like, oh, disruption of the normal compels the mythological. And then as we get older, we go, oh, age is a great thing. So your definition of what's important in your life comes from you, not from fashion magazines or peer pressure or Twitter feeds or anything. So it's a great freedom. So it's a way to think also of our challenges as actually, guiding instructions that have a payoff. Sometimes, when we're older, yeah. So that's one way to think of it. And then we can go into, you know, now, and Mercury's retrograde, it's diving into the sun. So it's kind of cool as we convene our course, because Mercury, people often go, oh, Mercury's retrograde, you know, it's like 3 times a year. Okay, get used to it. It just means that Mercury communication, if we lived in a wise culture, Mercury retrograde would say the mind wants to go in, it wants to research, it wants to open old journals, it wants to reconnect, reconvene, all the way home. And it's going all the way backwards to station on September 5th at the eclipse degree. So it's going all the way back into Leo now. So Mercury, wise power of language, is going all the way back to connect with Mars, you know, its originating creative spark, and then go forward so that creativity has its full language skills. And that's part of it's perfect timing for our adventure together. Yeah.
Right. Well, you just mentioned the eclipse, and I know that you had a conversation with Stephen Dinan before the eclipse happened.
Right.
And I wonder if you can maybe, because we've got a couple of people asking about it, can you just sort of mention your thoughts on the after eclipse?
Right. It's like, what now, right?
Yeah.
Because nothing's ever something, and then nothing. It's all ongoing, you know, as well as the dance. And so it's very pertinent to our collective right now. So there's the sun, right? There's the sun. And Mars is very close to the sun right now. We don't see Mars. It's called Mars in the underworld. So Mars, positive yang, is in the underworld in Leo, close to the star Regulus, you know, remembering. And it hums all these mythologies, which are eager. They're bowing down in front of us, going, animate us, we're here. You know, we'd like to participate, but we need to be invited. So King Arthur, you know, did not die. He goes to Avalon to go take Pilates classes with the priestesses to await the world's call at a time of danger when we need positive heroic yang in everyone, regardless of, you know, temporary gender assignment, you know, to dance with positive feminine. We go, now would be really good, you know. And it's also the same as, wait, I have some right here. Yes. Hi, John the Conqueror. I happen to have my handy Hi John the Conqueror root. Here it is. Hi John the Conqueror is another great, he's a trickster redeemer folk hero of the South. He, like all trickster redeemers and heroes, the quality we want to cultivate, is interested in liberating women, liberating everybody, liberating the men, liberating even the tyrant who has hardened their heart. And so Hi John, the trickster, we want to call upon him in getting ready to emerge, and we get to dance with this quality in our lives and invite him into the world. He finds a way out of no way and hits a straight lick with a crooked stick. Just boom. And it said that he did not die. He goes to go live in Hi John the Conqueror route. Look, there he is right there, to await the world's call. And we go, now would be really great. So from the eclipse, you know, Mars is getting ready to become visible again after its eclipse dance, after it's been eclipsed, going, you know, what is true heroism? What is true charisma? Because I love the derivation of the etymology of charisma. It comes from charis, from which we get charitable, from which we get Eucharist, from which we get cor, heart, from which we get Cordelia, dedicated heart in Shakespeare. So true charisma is a charitable heart. Take that, Joel Ornstein. Right, and so again, so Mars is gathering its true charisma, you know. And what is the purpose of the hero? So at the moment of the eclipse, which was really great, you know, and there's all kinds of, you know, fantastic and glorious ordeals associated with camping out with 50,000 people. But at the moment of the eclipse, in which it really is this astoundingly beautiful moment of symmetry, which is why even the most scientific, you know, people at the moment of the eclipse, you know, and it's completely different, a partial, like, total. People go, oh my God. Even scientists call on the divine, going, oh, it is so beautiful. And it's got an energetic, orgasmic symmetry. We're, you know, and as the science geeks at the festival say, we are stardust. We are. And it's like, oh. And there, you know, you get to see stars as they come out. But there was Venus at her height, blazing. So Venus runs this eclipse. She goes, Venus, you know, the purpose of the hero is to be initiated by Venus to protect life, to be husbandry, stewardship, kindness, you know, you know, all these qualities. And it's the part of us that invites, you know, out there in the world, you know, mob mind and sad cruelty, the worst of people being invited. We want to invite the best. And there was Venus going, right, in Cancer, remember, you're all kin. Brer Rabbit, there was times when all the critters used to gather to sagactuate, just like there ain't been no hard times, like there ain't been no falling out, like they all remembered they were kin. And that's from the eclipse. Venus was blazing out, going, remember, family, it's all family, it's all symmetry, it's all design, it's all beauty. You know, this is good for us. Beauty is an instinct. You know, and even just as colleague Catherine Usman Fitz says, even crooks could make more money making a neighborhood beautiful. You know, evil is so stupid. And we go, right. So the eclipse, again, this precise thing, it's my 5th eclipse. I am an eclipsophile because it is so profound. And there's a million ways to think of it, and, you know, everything speaking to us all by our angle of affinity. My colleague Dale O'Brien was doing a lot of history of eclipse paths through America. And so 2 months before the eclipse, he gave a pretty prepared talk on YouTube. You can find it. In which he traces the eclipse path. You know, it's the Pacific Northwest, and then through the land of Lincoln and almost every town named Lincoln, and then it exits America at Fort Sumter, right, which is where the Civil War began. And then it goes out into the ocean, pretty much tracking the slave path, right? So he said 2 months ago, this eclipse will have a lot to do with us metabolizing the last vestiges of toxic confederacy and the false con of racism and division. Pretty accurate, you know. So yeah, the con of division. You know, there's a Neptune part of all of us that knows that we're all in this dream together, and the biggest con, and we want to be the liberating trick that frees us from the con, is of separation. And the biggest con also is to be snookered into polarity. And this is especially, you know, my dedication and how I love working with our team, that we not be snookered into polarity, because we strengthen whatever we oppose. You know, that we cultivate this spiraling, linguistic spiraling, emotional spiraling. And that also is where we get to fun experiments. The fun experiment of complicity, not shame, not blame, but whatever's going on personally and collectively, we are contributing creative chi. You know, and once we realize that, we can inhale our chi from an undesirable story and exhale it into a more desirable story. But as part of our Saturn, we'll be beginning with Saturn, because I love Saturn. I have 2. Because Saturn is the model, it's the part of us that receives the ancestral download from the father, and you can really get pretty interestingly precise on this. Work done and not done gets passed on to us by our ancestors, and you can see it. And you can track families and go, there's a definite family theme. You know? And so Saturn is the part of us that receives the conditioned script about what is or isn't possible about men and our relationship to authority. But we can change that script. But it's useful to play with when things come along that are maybe not quite so pleasant. Rather than react, we get to respond and go, because Saturn is also the part of us that directs the movie, at first unwittingly, and as we gather together, then wittingly, and directs the movie of the conditioned script. And so you go, I wonder why I would have been hiring somebody to disappoint me, or to, every time I have a creative idea, they're there with a fire extinguisher to put it out, you know. And I like working with people when they have kerfuffles and going, rah, 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 and I go, has this ever happened before? And they go, yeah. And I go, so it's relevant. They go, yeah. So if it's relevant, it's resonant, you know, and it's like eager to be worked with. And that's why we bring in every session, and always, the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, because they represent huge deconditioning. They represent huge forces of nature's evolutionary intelligence, and they're the keepers of the whole big frame story in which we live and breathe and swim and move and everything, that we're all in this thing together. And when they dance with us, and by by being willing and paying attention and even saying the words, and you know, it hums these parts of us. So anytime we have what's called a Uranus or a Neptune or a Pluto transit, and we're all doing that collectively, it's like doing a bazillion years of spiritual psychotherapy in about an hour, like, you know, but the conditioning is gone. And then now what? Now what? You know, what is the most desirable? So, you know, so we have the conditioned script, and always, you know, playing. We don't have to believe anything, but playing with our complicity. It's really useful, you know, just on a lot of levels, because we're acknowledging responsibility, and then reassuming our responsibility of participating in dreaming the world into being. You know, so it's like discourage the bad, but encourage the good, you know, and not this, but this. So all teachings go into the cauldron now, go with the criterion: does it guide people to their own autonomy? Is it equal Mars and Venus, men and women, and humans and the rest of our relations on this planet? Is the trickster welcome? Can the truth be said? Soothsayer means truthsayer. Can the truth be said without cringing? Is it welcome, in fact? Yes, we ladle it out. No, we throw it back in for another round, you know, bubbling. So the quality of teaching or guiding, I prefer guiding really, that I love is not really hierarchical, and it's not believe. I think the age of gurus is kind of over-ish. Although we love many things. There's many ways of being anything as there are humans. We are all unique experiments. But this is what I'm dedicated to, you know, our autonomy, our uniqueness, our self-possession, our cultivation, our contribution, and you know, and when we gather together, we create a field that really encourages this. I love being schooled, you know, back on my own teaching. You know, manners is a Venus thing. So even at the eclipse retreat, or whatever it was, Mad Festival, I was emceeing one of the stages, and the sound guy, the stage manager, I rushed up to him and said, I need a standing mic up there because I'm going on in 2 minutes. And he said, "Hi, my name is Mark. That's how we do it. Now what would you like?" And I go, "Oh, that's really great. Thank you. Thank you." I was rushing and rude, right? I was like, "Hi, I need this thing." And he's like, and I love, you know, the hidden guides of the Sufis are the backstage workers, the board ops, the humble dervish, the homeless guy on the street, you know, everything's, and I go, that was great. And I could have felt rebuked or harumphatudinous, but it was like, no, that was really elegant. Thank you. And so I like to create an atmosphere in which we can do that, in which criticism is diagnosis, which is healing, which is guiding, which is just much more fun. And it's much more fun when we don't play it safe. You know, when we're, see, he could have just grumbled and been resentful, right? And I could have gotten huffy, like fuffa, or even, God forbid, high-handed. I'm the important, who's, you know, right? But it's like, no, equal, thank you, right. I just loved that. That was one of my biggest lessons in the whole eclipse thing, right? You know, may my bad manners be eclipsed by manners. And I go, right. And also, what happens when we rush? You know, and very often when we rush, it takes much more time because we offend people, and then you have to go back and dekerfuffle it. And these small things, you know, again, I learn a lot. You know, rushing. Again, I would like to be very calm, and rushing. It's a relationship to Saturn and time and everything that we're all working on. But rushing into live radio, and I said to the board up, "Oh, we only have 5 minutes. Can you edit this little thing?" And he said, "Relax. We have 5 minutes. Think of how long 5 minutes of dead air would be on the radio." And it's like, oh, it's forever. That's wonderful. So I keep that with me always, going, you only have 5 minutes. It's like, relax. It's infinite. So it's all perspective on time, not having enough time, not having enough money, not having enough. It's like, relax. You have $1. You know, relax. You got 5 minutes. You know, the angle. You know, and that's why we also study fairy tales, because we go, time. Do we have enough time? You know, which can make us rude. You know, and Saturn says, well, it depends on which kind of time. you're talking about. If you're talking about realistic tick, tick, tick time, no, none of us have enough time to answer our emails or save the world. But if we're talking about what in Chinese fairy tales is called irrational time, where you step into the magic tree trunk, into the enchanted land, you know, hours and days go by, and then when you step back out, 5 minutes, right? So we learn these skills of like, and then even in moments, you know, and it helps to be working with a group to do this. Time out, going into the magic tree trunk, gathering these things, all right, back, on. And that's also our capacity to, through metaphoric agility, to change a story that we're in, even a very dangerous story. You know, to go, wait a minute, I don't like this story, time out, backstage, story rewrite, we're rewriting the characters, back on stage, there you go. And I have some great examples of that, but from, you know, actual life. So astrology, you know, throughout my life, I'm in a high science grown up family who are like, and they don't quite get it. It's like people say, a great saying says, the God that an atheist denies never existed. Right? So very often the astrology that people set up to diss is a kind of carnival triviality. It's this exquisite and beautiful language that organizes our brain to be in attune with the choreography of creation, as evidenced by the word consider. Con is with and sitters the stars. We gather to consider, and by considering, we're lining up with the will of heaven, right? We're lining up so that then our actions are graced, and we are danced into our team, and we do feel we have allies, and the opportunity that's appropriate unfolds, and all those great things. And consider is the antidote to disaster, which means against the stars. Same with catastrophe, cat against astroph stars. So, you know, all these words and our 7-day week, Sunday, Moon Day, Mars Day, we have only because of 7 visible planets, because it's always been this language of how do we cultivate these qualities of intelligence in us, in our community, in the world, in order to make humans have manners again and rejoin choreography of creation in the garden of conscious kinship. There we go. We're convening the garden of conscious kinship.
Wow, that's just fascinating stuff. I could listen to you for days. But before I'm looking at the clock here, and yes. We have time for a few more questions. But before we take those, I do want to give a few details about the course. Again, it's called Visionary Activist Astrology. And this is going to be a really fascinating 7-week journey under Caroline's expert guidance, where you'll access the transformational intelligence hidden in the sun, the moon, and the planets. And the 7-week course takes place on Tuesdays at 5 o'clock Pacific time, starting Tuesday, September 12th. And if for any reason you can't join us live, that's fine. You won't miss the teachings. You will receive video replays, transcripts, and all course handouts on your course homepage. And also, I'd like to remind you that we offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses, giving a full 2 weeks until September 26th in this case, to make sure that you absolutely love it. I'm sure you will. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect in a private Facebook community group so you can stay connected with one another. And also, hey, everybody who registers receives the Visionary Activist Astrology bonus collection. Hey, free toy inside. You will receive an audio dialogue with Caroline Casey and Don Oscar Miro Quesada, and that is entitled Trickster and Shaman in Dialogue. You will also receive an audio book from Caroline called Making the Gods Work for You. Really and good. Then you'll receive an audio collection from the Visionary Activist radio show archives called True Wonder Women, Crossing Borders to the Middle East. And this is fun. You will also receive an entry into the astrological reading raffle, and you can find details about that on the website at visionaryastrologycourse.com. And when you register by tonight, Thursday, August 31st, by midnight Pacific, you will receive an additional bonus gift. You will receive another audio collection from the Visionary Activist Radio Show archives, and this is called Woofy Women. So before we go any further, Caroline, what are you most looking forward to sharing in your upcoming course?
Well, it's great because, you know, I've taught a number of courses, many places, and with Shift, and it's always had an astrological frame. And so Shift, that I view as my Saturn, I give them Uranus trickster, they give me Saturn structure. That's good. They get it done medicine. So I go, let's do full on astrology. I've always used it. And it's like, so let's really do the alphabet, you know, and let's really do what is Saturn, so that everybody, professional or neophyte, you know, gets a real, like, right, Saturn. And then what are the signs of the zodiac? So the planets are the verbs, the living intelligence in us and the world. The zodiac is the adverb. In what way, right? So we're going to put those together, you know, and then they're in houses, little pie slice divisions of the sky, if you have or know your chart, which is where will the adventure unfold. So I love the simplicity and elegance and built-in structure of this course, going right. So we start with Saturn, defining our terms, you know, like we're doing kind of now, and then going Saturn, right? And so that everybody, again, the reason I love a diverse audience of professionals and people who love it for a long time and people who know nothing is we go, okay, if Saturn is focus, and then we begin to learn Aries, you know, Saturn and Aries, what might that be, you know? What is the assignment? What is the difficulty? What is the shadow? What is the assignment? And everybody can go, oh, okay. You know, what did our culture encourage or discourage in men? You know, when you were born, everything's a research project. So I love that. I love it now, to honor this beautiful language and bring it alive in all participants, which is where teachings really happen. You know, it's when we draw the planets. It's like in tarot courses that I started studying in 1970. It said, you know, tarot cards are most meaningful when they're inside you. So we would all paint them, right? And so we're not going to do that this course that I know of, but we are going to actually learn how to draw the little planetary glyphs, because it's ancient and resonant, and as Rupert Sheldrake says, full of morphic resonance. You know, people all the way back to the, you know, observational towers of Babylon, you know, have made these symbols: the sun, little circle, the moon, you know, Mercury. Everything's a circle or a semicircle and a cross. Saturn, so elegant to draw it that way. So even the drawing moves it into our body. And then each planet has a color, and we play with that, and a way of honoring. So I'm enthused. I'm enthused at this moment in time to be able to do kind of full on astrology romp. Um, to have it really be kind of a little more counselly, with, again, for starters, you know, two people entering the raffle who are brave enough, you know, and open enough to want to be, to share their chart, you know, two people per class, right? In which we get to go, well, what about this? And with guidelines so that nobody lays any heavy misinformation on you, I'll go, no, there we go. Because I have seen, you know, even colleagues, you know, do difficult things. As a little side note, you know, wonderful astro colleague, at a, you know, these are people who translate Greek and ancient Egyptian texts and stuff, and at a gathering he's like, who wants their chart delineated by ancient Greek technique? And I knew better. Everybody's like, me, you know, and they put their chart up, and there was my friend, but saying, as we can see, things are going well for this woman, but soon she will develop a debilitating disease and her lover will leave her. And I go, buy this woman a drink. Here, come with me, darling. We're going to fluff you up, and just you know, which was also wrong. But we're going to distinguish superstition to limit anybody's sense of possibilities is spiritual harassment, you know, and is a kind of spiritual crime. But we don't get grumpy necessarily. We go, flag on that play, patriarchal imposition of tyrannical limits, you know, abuse of Saturn, 5-yard penalty, declined, ball back in play. All right. So, you know, I love, you know, well, I love this language and these charts, and so to be able to share it, so people can feel safe that they will not be subject to impositional abuse, right? But to encouragement and queries, they go, oh, ooh, yeah, so that people are guided to their own revelation, going, for instance, as you know, something that these things kind of surface at moments when they are. And right now, historically, a lot of things are becoming clear, which allows us to have greater forgiveness. I like redefining the word forgive as to mean to give energy for change. And when we track the moon in people's charts, which is full of so much, I mean, this is such an infinite language. The more we bring to it from our uniqueness, the more the language makes itself available to us. So the moon is feelings, emotions, women, our mother, the whole lineage, ancestral lineage, going way, way, way back there. And you can really kind of feel your way back into a lunar tradition. And then what was its journey forward through time, from a time of being honored and kinned and respected, through various forms of inquisition and orthodoxy. And then it says, and then think of your mother. Everyone think of your mother, consider your mother as your mother, but also as a research project, meaning what happened to this tradition? And it's different for everybody. Sometimes you go, it came through, you know, it was quite beautiful, amazing. And they go, my mother was sparky, or it got squinched. But I found one interesting thing lately is to say, when justified, to people going, well, the tension between you and your mother, and they're like, oh, and I go, not that she would have thought this consciously, but if you think of the whole journey, to your mother, if you are your witchy, fantastic self, it will be dangerous for everyone, and the Inquisition will come round you all up. So that's why she did not want you to be yourself. And very often they go, right, that makes sense. Right? So it's not something that the mother could have said, you know, but it is an interesting thing kind of coming up. And when I kind of found that, it's like, oh, and it allows the daughter to go, right, my mom was frightened of me being myself, you know, because of history. And we can radiate to our mothers, whether they be living or ancestral. Thank you for your concern. I understand, historically justified, but it's okay. There are places in the world where it's still difficult. But we are gathering to create a realm of safety, to track back to our originating impulse, where it's okay. And wherever you are among the living and the breathing or the ancestral, may it go well for you, right? And it heals the mother-daughter kerfuffle a lot, yeah.
Okay, wow, that's we could talk forever. You were talking about the moon, so let me go ahead and ask this question here. This is an anonymous question again. It says, my mother is a Sagittarius and father was a Taurus. I'm a Sagittarius with a Taurus moon. Does it mean anything to have my parents' signs so prominently in my chart?
Wait, I have to even I have to track that. All right, Anonymous says her mom was a Sagittarius and her dad was a Taurus. So mom was a Rolling Stone. It's like the reverse of the blues song. And she is a what?
And she is a Sagittarius with a Taurus moon.
Cool.
So she's got her mother's sun sign,
right,
and her father as her moon.
Well, we love symmetry. We love symmetry and mystery, and I won't presume because that would be like a beautiful full-on session. But ways to think of it. We've got all the fairy tale motifs here in a way. Sagittarius. To be a Sagittarius woman, already we take everything within its historic context. So it's pretty cool to be a Sagittarius woman now. Right, in the 19th century, Sagittarius men, Mark Twain, Gauguin, Joseph Conrad, they went out into global bigness. Storytellers, painters, crossed borders. Sagittarius women, Emily Dickinson, traveled from the poetry in their own attic. Now, stay in the attic or go out into the world. But the fairy tale motif, one is the great journey, you know, to extend one's curiosity widely, you know, different people, different food, different cultures, different everything. And we got two Sagittarius women here, pretty woofy, right? And the man who's more solid. And so there, you know, at least two, but fairy tale motifs of the quest, Sagittarius, and then very often the questing person will set forth for the waters of life or the treasure or the MacGuffin, and then return home weary, having not found it, to their own little moon and Taurus safe place. And then they go, wait, what's that glowing in the coals of the hearth? It's the treasure they were seeking the whole time. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. There's no place like home. You know, the treasure was always moon and Taurus at home, you know, but you had to go out. And it's like a great storyteller friend of mine, Joya Timpanelli, says one of the fairy tale motifs, this would be very Moon and Taurus, is careful living in a particular place. This badger, this tree, this rock, right? So Sagittarius is don't fence me in, vast, vast, vast. And Moon is called exalted in Taurus, the most sensually pleasurable. You know, so we'd say, probably this person has a pretty comfortable house filled with treasures from all over the place. But, you know, or whatever. But, yeah, no, so that's great. And it's also wonderful to think of our lineages, you know, the Sagittarius mom, the spirited woman, and the more kind of rounded guy. And we go, yeah. So nothing simple, but it invites us to think of our heritage as an experimental assignment, both astrologically and also our ancestral peoples, our DNA, you know, all the beings that live within us. How are we assigned to get all these different beings within us, you know, and how are we uniquely equipped to cross borders as a Sagittarius in a deep, sensual way, and to travel not as a tourist, right? But I would think Sagittarius, Moon, and Taurus, you know, and I'll check in with you later, you know, would travel and then set up camp as though they lived there, the local restaurant, the thing, you know, the whatever, you know, just, and then it's kind of nomadic, right? It's travel, set up beautiful camp, pillows, soup, local stuff, local guides, you know, kind of like that.
Okay, fascinating. I love this next question. This is from Sherilyn, who wants to know, how can I tell if I'm the problem or it's just not in the stars right now?
What's it? Right. Well, well, first, let's throw the word problem into the cauldron for the fun of it, and ladle out so many other possibilities. Mystery. I wonder if I'm the mystery. And no, we don't blame things on the stars exactly. I love the satirist Jay Searle, who mocks all spiritual traditions in a pretty good way, and he goes, Mercury retrograde, that's when I get to scapegoat a planet for not accepting responsibility for all the things I screw up. And we go, right, yeah, that's good too. So, you know, that would be a worthy query, but we would want to play with the language of the question. Am I the problem, or is it not in the stars? Meaning some element of frustration, apparently, in the question, like we have. And we might want to cook it back, going, I wonder if I, Sherilyn, I'll presume to pretend to be you for a moment, if I, Sherilyn, am directing this movie, why would I be directing it this way, I wonder? You know, hiring people to be not absent, hiring people to disappear, hiring people to be disappointed, hiring people to not pay me well. I wonder. And in case I am, let me throw this movie script into the cauldron and ladle out a more desirable one. It's why we throw frustration and anger into the eclipse cauldron and ladle out desire. So we'd want to come back to the Sherilyn part of all of us and go, well, what is it you desire? You know, and it's not something to these deep realms of Mars are not necessarily something to say to others, but to acknowledge and write down for oneself. It's the essence of all Western esoteric teaching. It says, unless we answer that question, what do you want? There's no tiller to your boat. You know, what is it you want? And then, you know, the careful understanding of how to magnetize that desire. And and with Mars getting ready to reemerge mid-September, heliacal rise before the sun, you know, the power of desire and creative desire wedded with language, you know, even more amplified by this course, step right up, you know, is emerging. And so it means, you know, what is it we all want? You know, each one of us. And there's no editing. You know, maybe you want, you know, a cute boyfriend or a car or a thing. You know, it says all desires are pure if we cook them back to what they're really for. So to desire, to manifest, you know, not in a simple way, and then to go, and go, well, that was good. But because what they said is, you know, as we learn to master desire and invocation, it's intrinsically self-educating. Our desires become more and more mature and more for the well-being of all, and more I'd like this, provided this is in accord with the great woof that animates the universe, you know, that quality. So Yes, no, you asked the question, Sherilyn. So there must be something that you desire that we want to dissolve the obstacles to your desire, unless you're kind of amused and in love with your obstacles, in which case you can fondle them as long as you want. But maybe you want to dissolve them, because we all get to a point of getting bored, and certainly our friends get bored with our, repetitive, you know, non-useful complaints, depressions, and dreads. Um, yeah, and we're gonna play bold. Paul Stamets gave a great talk. He's a wonderful buddy, mycologist at the Eclipse Ordeal Festival. That was really genius about many, many, many things, mushrooms and all. And he gave a great talk on microdosing LSD and microdosing psilocybe, and studies done at Johns Hopkins and legitimate grown-up places, and then the whole history of humans' relationship to psilocybe mushrooms, which he delineates and thinks it's part of our evolutionary advantage as humans, that humans would run across this, and if you run across a mushroom, which is now proven to reduce our reactive fear, our reactive, let's say, our fear reaction, non-useful fear reaction, and increase confidence and kindness. He said those are leadership qualities. So you might be interested in taking microdoses or not, but see, even hearing about it hums a little endogenous. Endogenous means everything out there is in, or many things that are out there are inside us as well. So you don't have to do illegal or bold or daring things unless you want. But even hearing about it going, right, what do you want? Maybe you would like to be confident and kind, and to release reactive, non-useful reactive fear. And we go, oh yeah, we'd all like to do that. I mean, wouldn't we? It's like the I Ching says, there's always something ponderous and heavy about the learning of the self-taught. Learning comes alive in convivial discourse. And so part of my aspiration, I've taught quite a number of courses with Shift, but part of my aspiration for this, is that we really, I'll present and all that, but woof woof want to play. I really do invite people to be engaged, and to bring up things like Sherilyn, because it's really fun. I love that. And it's also where the teaching comes alive, going, all right, here's a Saturn teaching, here's a thing teaching. What do you think this means? How about this? How about this? And it's an interesting challenge and which is also by way of saying, introverts are completely welcome. There are many people in my courses who never say a thing and are always cloaked, and I love them. And I meet them later. They have full-on astrological readings. I go, I'm one of your lurkers. And I go, it's an entire class of lurkers, 300 lurkers. That's fine too. But we'd also like some, well, there are already people volunteering to share their charts, but just a little bit of kind of woof-woof exchange is completely welcome. Not demanded or required, just welcome.
All right. Wow. Well, geez, look at the clock. This time goes so fast talking to you. This has just been a fascinating hour with you, Caroline. I want to thank everyone for watching and for submitting your questions. You made a great conversation, I think. And I want to thank you, Caroline, for sharing your expertise and wisdom with us on the call today. Visionary Activist Astrology starts Tuesday, September 12th. And again, you can visit visionaryastrologycourse.com to learn more and to register. So before we go, Caroline, do you have any final words for our audience?
Oh, let's just, say that the divine wants to be liberated from past confines of human imagination. So, Liberty Hall. So I like myself imagining the divine as like a wise, tricky, compassionate coyote bowing down before each one of us going, woof, woof, want to play? And we go, yes, we do. Woof, woof.
Perfect. Wow. Well, thank you, Caroline. And thank you again to everyone who joined us today. On behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you all well and look forward to having you on this course or perhaps another one in the future. Have a great night, everyone.
Woof, woof. Thank you.
Woof, woof.